Hey guys, welcome back to Creating Careers Podcast. On today's episode, I had a chance to sit down and talk with Kyle Roberts. Kyle is an integral part of the film and commercial scene in Birmingham. He also owns a production company called Next Level Productions, as well as is a partner in a studio and rental house. Kyle has a really unique story, and I was really excited to sit down and learn about his journey out to California and why he ended up moving back to Birmingham. His love and passion for film and commercial work in Birmingham is really infectious, as just admirable. So I was really excited to talk with Kyle, and I'm excited even more so to share his story with you now. Check it out. Kyle Roberts, congratulations, not congratulations. Sorry,
Oh,
I'm in
me.
graduation season. Yeah, congratulations. No. Thank you so much for joining me today on Creating Creators Podcast. I've seen your work. I've seen your sort of company, your brand, and I'll probably say brands. From what I understand, I think you have a couple of brands in the Birmingham area that you are at least partners with or full owner of. So thank you again for joining me today.
Absolutely, man.
Well,
I'm
I'm
ready.
excited to get to know a little bit of your story. So let's sort of dive into that real quick. So, first of all, tell me, who is Kyle Roberts? Tell me a little bit of your origin story. Where do you come from? Where'd you grow up? Tell me a little bit of those early years.
Origin story. I like that. This is like a prequel almost.
There you
Um,
go.
so I grew up in Pinson, like Center Point, Northeast Birmingham. Lived right behind the courthouse. My dad was a youth pastor. Grew up in church, that kind of thing.
Do you mind me
And
asking approximate age? Because I've got some family from Pinson.
I'm 39.
Okay. Do you know any Hootens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I graduated in 2003.
So Jim Bob Hooten.
Yes, dude. I used to play baseball with Jim Bob.
So Jim Bob's he's my step brother.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So his dad Robert and my mom are married. So
Those were
yeah,
that name was in the recesses of my mind, and you just brought me back, dude.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, went to Pinson, graduated from there. Think I was in bands. I'm in hardcore bands, still am, and thought music was going to be my thing, right? So
Obviously.
we my band all in got signed and toured for years. Like I dropped out of college at Wallace State to go on tour. Still thinking I would do recording, music tech, or continue touring. We'd hit it big, whatever. So during those years, '05 to '09, I kind of fell in love with LA, like on the route. I've always loved movies, obviously. And so when it came time to get married, everybody settling down, I went back to school for film and broadcasting at UAB. I decided that's what I wanted to do. So that's my origin story. Actually, my first set was in 2006, and it was one of the sidewalk scrambles in town. A buddy was like, "Hey, you know how to over under cables? You're in the music industry. Come be our gaffer." And I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but sure." So meteoric rise. I'm lighting on day one, which was kind of insane. But yeah, my first set was in 2006, and then it's just been growing from there.
What was UAB like then as far as their film school?
Yeah, so there wasn't a film major in the early 2000s. I had some buddies that had gone there. You had to like major in something close, and so we were all doing like the TV news, like broadcasting route, and then we all got together. The theater department and documentaries and all these departments came together and came up with a film minor, and that's what me and some other people did. Won filmmaker of the year in 2009 and had some films and festivals at the time. But really it was, hey, there's a theater department we can get a bunch of actors from to come work for free. So that was the main thing. And they had like a steady cam at UAB, which is so random. Joe Walker, one of my mentors, had talked them into buying that in 2003. And I got crazy experience just being around UAB and being like the one in charge of the gear and being techie and all that, back in those days.
Nice, nice. Anybody that you went to school with then that you still like work with professionally?
So Elena Jordan is my best girlfriend. She lives in LA. She works at Universal as like a tour guide, and she's been an actress, host, that kind of thing for years. She also produces. We actually made something when she came back to Birmingham for the leap year, like a year ago, February 29th, a little spooky short or whatever. And so that was fun to see, like, we haven't worked together in 15 years, how far we'd
Yeah.
both come and just spend 4 hours making something silly.
That's cool. UAB, that's where I graduated from, but I did a history
Mm,
major with a minor in education, and then went on and did my fifth year also, so I could teach history as sort of my
okay.
background. So obviously, straight in line with obvious, videography, filmmaking, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So,
Being
but
smart, yeah.
yeah, I don't know about that, but that was sort of the route I went. But I've had some former students of mine that ended up getting more involved in videography or filmmaking, and they did UAB and UAB TV. Was that a thing when you were there? Because it was sort of like a almost like a weekly kind of live on the street, man on the street kind of video program. But then they also did film, and then even did some stuff they submitted to the sidewalk, and did the scramble usually. At least
Mhm.
his name's Tyler Downey, was my former student. Him and Dustin Harrelson, like
Yeah, yeah.
they were really involved in that. I didn't know if it was around when you were there or if you were involved in that.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. June Mack was like the main professor that did film 1 and 2, and Lee Shackelford was my screenwriting professor who like worked on Star Trek TNG and all. Like, we had this crazy network at UAB. I don't know why they're here, but it was cool to
Yeah.
learn from them. And I don't think
Well,
one of them do that anymore, but
Well, that's cool that, I mean, they didn't really have a film program, but yet the broadcast still had people that were able to really instruct and direct kids in those kind of directions.
yeah, for sure. It was
That's
really cool. And the way I did it was like get all my electives and hard, math and all that stuff out of the way in 2 years, and then I just got to do like video stuff for 2 years. It was awesome.
Yeah. Do you still play? You still do music in general?
Yeah, so Furnace Fest is a thing in town that the guys
Yeah.
from Workplay put on every year, and we got back together in 2021. After a 13-year hiatus or whatever, to sort of play one of those pre-shows, and then we're just like, oh, this is fun in our 30s, so we've stuck with it, and yeah, we play like a show a month basically.
How much of music influences your filmmaking?
I think music, it, it has the creative aspect for sure, but also like the problem solving. You know what I mean? You come up with one good part, or maybe you have one good idea in a short film or whatever, and you have to tie all that together, which is the same thing in songwriting, that challenge. I think that's what keeps us kind of going these days. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I think of, usually the part that you sort of envision is that middle part. It's not really the beginning, it's not usually the end. Oftentimes it's that middle section. And then you got to sort of build the bridges out from there, which can be really difficult. And I can imagine the same thing with sort of music and song.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit of your journey. Tell me, how did you, like, you started off, you said your first time on set. You like some of those pictures?
These pictures are hilarious.
So
Yeah.
you got some, your first time on set, you were a gaffer, just, grabbed an extension cord and ran with it kind of deal. Um, if your first lighting setup was anything like mine, mine involved a can lamp, like a clamp light, shop light,
Hmm.
and a tall lamp, and like a tabletop lamp. That was my 3 point lighting
I mean,
for
hey,
some of my students.
I have to fight for practicals these days. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
everything's got to be a film light. But back in the day, we had UAB's lighting kit. So they had like an Airy kit of tungsten, and they also had like Lowell Totas, which were all the rage back in the day, because you
I
could.
feel like you started off strong.
We started off strong. They looked like
Yeah.
little strips of tungsten, and then you could bounce it into a silver reflector or go through, a soft side of white. And so I learned bounce light or softening like really early, before I knew why I was doing that, or, why the DP wanted that.
Nice. And then what about from there, like your time in LA? Talk a little bit of that. What was that like, and what kind of work were you doing out there?
Yes. So to bridge the gap really quick, like I did what a lot of people do, I feel like, which is, do a photo booth or start shooting weddings or, some way to be like, I'm getting paid to do kind of what I like to do. And this
Right.
is like 2009, 2010. And then a buddy that I had done a couple scrambles with was like, hey, I need somebody to shoot a feature film, and it's like, well, I've done like 6 shorts at this point, which is not a lot, now I've done 200 or whatever. So, it got really big really fast, and it was all on weekends in the winter when people could work their jobs and then come shoot, so we did our indie thing, and it turned out to be like a decent horror film, for 2010. And that kind of had a festival circuit. I had done my capstone at UAB that was winning festivals. And so all of a sudden it was like, hey, there's like a young DP in town or whatever. And so I actually gaffed or DP'd 5 films before I ever went to LA, right? So me and my wife waited until we got married in 2012. And then we went out to LA in 2013. She did grad school out there. And during my time in LA, it wasn't like I was just going and shooting every single day. Like I was the techie gear nerd guy. And so really fast, I shot a couple things on the Sony lot. It's like, oh, short films or whatever. This is great. 2 months in, you're like, okay, big fish in freaking ocean or whatever. So I took a job at a rental house, right? Which I didn't know much about. I didn't have a ton of gear. I just had like on-set experience. But within 2 months of being in shipping and receiving, which I don't know if I'm sure some of the listeners know about rental houses, but you're just scrubbing cases and scanning gear in and out. You might do a run to the Disney lot real quick because they need a monitor, and then you're back doing the grunt work. But within 2 months, I moved up into QC, which is the service department. So we're working on cameras and lenses and cleaning filters and servicing matte boxes. Broken stuff comes back, that kind of thing. I had a really big rental house with 12 bays called Radiant Images in Los Angeles. And so I'm shooting on the weekends or at night for my buddies or for, pennies because I still wanted to be a DP. But what happened is big shoots, like there's a Nike commercial coming through, the prep techs and the DPs would come to the prep and say they didn't have an AC or they needed a B cam assistant. They would get me to come be their first AC, because I was so techie and could problem solve and had showed them how to route the tear deck or, use the wireless follow focus, like all these things that were kind of like new at the time. Like the Movi came out and nobody knew how to use that thing, the M10 in like 2015. And so it was like, oh, this guy knows how to do that. We'll just get him to come tech it, right? So I got a bunch of jobs as an AC just because I knew the gear so well, and had connections at rental houses, and was really only shooting for like USC or the occasional commercial. But a lot of my work in LA, and I had enough hours to go in the union, like as an AC, is mainly what I was doing out there. Yeah.
What is that like out there in LA? I mean, you already said sort of like there's this ocean because there's so many people that are sort of doing this type of work.
Yeah,
But
man.
how different is it from what you experience in Birmingham?
It's way different. Like everybody, you take an Uber and the Uber driver has a script they're pitching you. It's like everybody wants to be a filmmaker, literally.
Yeah.
So and you're like, I don't have any money. I want to make a movie too. So it's just like it became this grind of people. We called this thing at the time of Daddy bought me a red. Because reds were like the thing at the time, 2014 or whatever, where they don't have a ton of experience, but they have a camera, right? And so those kind of guys were getting all these jobs by like underbidding a lot of us, that were used to the traditional, like you rent the camera and the lenses for the job or whatever, job specific. So, me with my little 5D had no way of, underbidding or providing anything to these productions that they couldn't do other than like, it's like mediocre
Right.
cinematography just because it's like, oh, they have a nice camera. But anyway, so that was kind of the grind out there, was like, not to be super negative, but just you're fighting a million other people that are either as good as you or better, or they have better gear than you,
Yeah. I've talked to quite a few people in the film industry that really value like smaller markets like Birmingham. And even the idea of like some of these, the way the big budget films have sort of gone and the indie film, there's really nothing in between anymore. It seems like everyone has to do indie, or at least smaller budget type productions. Does that ring true to you? Do you feel like there's that middle ground now that doesn't really exist? You either got the blockbuster, so to speak, or the I don't know the price ranges, but you know those big, huge Marvel type productions, or you've got the small little indies that are on a shoestring budget, and there's not really those places in between in Hollywood that used to fund all of those people out there. Does that seem true to you? And does it help areas like Birmingham or even Atlanta, which Atlanta now seems like more of a powerhouse than it was, since that's where so much of the Marvel stuff has been shot?
Yeah, I would definitely say the mid tier budgets have gone away in everything, even like corporate and commercial, feature films. It's like we either have pennies and we need you to do it with five guys instead of 12, or they're flying people in and doing these bigger budget things. I think Birmingham has come a long way since 2013 when I left, as far as crew that have been trained up.
Right.
I think productions are able to come in and hire locally, which I hope they continue to do. And me and my partner Kevin have sort of made it a mission of ours to like train up the next generation so that when, say, there's two movies coming to town, right, we can totally crew up one of those movies,
Right.
whether it's indie or whether it's big budget. We have enough experienced people for that. But it's like that second film that comes through, or there's also a big documentary coming through, or whatever. It's like, we want everybody here to look good, and productions to keep coming back. So it's like it's been a grind, but fun to try to train up that next generation so that we can say yes and send, somebody calls and we're already booked. Hey, this person's great or whatever. But yeah, I got totally sidetracked. But
No, no, you're
basically,
good. You're good.
in every like production, it's either we're hurting, we really need favors, blah blah blah. Can you throw blank in? Or we're not getting the calls because they're hiring ASC whatever.
Yeah. Tell me, what ended up bringing you back to Birmingham? So, I mean, you were out in LA, you were doing your rental house kind of work. You were also getting opportunities DP. I would imagine that was sort of growing opportunities and getting more and more of those. What ended up drawing you back home?
So my wife and I, she graduated grad school. We really wanted to settle down and have a kid, right? And we were living in North Hollywood at the time. There's no rent control. Um, and so every year they'd raise your rent with no improvements for like $100, which is not a lot until you've been there 5 years, and you're paying
Right.
500 more dollars a month for the same place. And so it was just like, man, do we like try to buy a house here? Like I had a full time job. She was about to either have to go into therapy or social work, like get a real job, I guess. And it's just like, man, my buddies lived right down the street from me. Shout out Alex Justinger, um, in North Hollywood, and paid $780,000 for a small 3 bedroom. And I was just like, I can't do it. I got to get out of here, man. And so I don't think the plan was to just go back to Birmingham. I had a hookup where I was going to get on a Marvel film in Atlanta. And so we're driving the U-Haul with the puppies across the country, thinking that we're moving to Atlanta, outskirts or whatever. And I got a call from a buddy, Jamie Cottle, that was like, hey, I'm at an ad agency here in Birmingham. We really need a fill in for 3 months because their videographer, DP, producer, is what they called him there, but is in the military and he's on leave or he's on deployment. And so I was like, man, 3 months, we can say hey to the family, hang out with my parents, see her family, and then we'll end up in Atlanta. There was going to be a long prep. It wasn't like tomorrow I'm on, Black Panther or whatever. And so, we tried that. Fast forward 5 years, and I've been back the whole time, but
Yeah.
they just kept renewing my contract. He didn't come back. I got full time. And it was like, okay, well, we can just buy a house here that's way bigger and nicer. And I kind of did the commercial thing. So that's where I've been the past few years.
Nice. Well, I see your brand has sort of evolved a little bit. The next level productions. I mean, you've sort of kept some consistent elements to it. Talk a little bit of what your brand really like. How did you come up with your brand? What does your brand sort of represent? And maybe even the evolution here. How did you end up getting into the 3D animation part?
I'm so bad at talking about my stuff. Okay, so I had a music venue in Leeds, like where I lived through college or whatever, called The Next Level, right? And it was all about getting like small bands to come and play when the big bands would come through. And that company, I guess, I started moving into film when I started doing weddings and short films in 2009. So I've had that company since 2009. With that same philosophy of like over delivering, what the ask is, and constantly trying to bring on new people, and train them up while still delivering an awesome product. And so that's kind of where the next level thing comes from. And actually, this is so funny to see that old blue one with like the flares and stuff, because that was like
Yeah, yeah.
the current one that's the pixel art is Thayer Helu, who has played guitar in bands with me for years. He's a local bartender now, but he does pixel art, and he does composing for films. He did the music for one of my films that's on Amazon, and I was just like, dude, this is kind of what I want. And what's cool about that is he made that just for me. Like the paintings on the wall, like that's my dog, and like that he made me like a family crest and stuff. Like if you zoom in on that thing, it's like stuff about me. All I said is I need like a weird little creature to run up, and the lights come on. And he kind of took that and ran with it, which was awesome.
That's really cool. I'll
Yeah,
have to check out. We'll have to zoom in and check it out
for sure.
later on. See some of those
The little
elements.
Easter eggs, yeah, man.
Definitely. All right, so let's talk about some of your work. You've done the film, the short film, the feature films that you've done. You've done commercial work. I see a lot of the commercial work now that you're doing with Drew Callner. I know they're at Amherst. That one looked beautiful, like
Thank you.
the type of just shots y'all got. What are you seeing now in the kind of work, or maybe the evolution? Let's put it that way. What kind of evolution have you seen in your own work, and what do you attribute that evolution to?
The evolution. Okay, so I've always been like a dark and moody guy, I guess. Just growing up in metal and hardcore and liking horror films and all that kind of stuff. And that's where I got my start. The first three features I worked on were horror or in some way moody, super moody, serial killer. So
Yeah, this Descent, the one you did not too long ago.
that's a music
That
video.
one, yeah, that one is dark,
Thank you.
definitely
I said
for
thank you
me.
to that. um,
No,
I
no.
had
I mean, I
total
think
creative control with that, and so I could go as dark as I wanted. That's my buddy of 20 years, JD's band. And there's Nate. He's awesome.
I think I've seen. Did you play drums for them at one point?
I did not play drums for them. I was in a
Okay.
band before that with JD.
Okay. All right. I thought I saw. I think I've got a photo of you playing drums in here somewhere, and I thought that was with Terrifier.
Yeah, no,
So
we played all in played Furnace Fest last year. I think that's probably the photo. That's
okay.
my parents' basement, by the way. Okay, so
Poor parents.
trying to like map out the evolution. I think
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
it's been trying to sneak a little bit of that into projects like over the years and getting better and better at it, because everybody wants bright and happy, or they think they want bright and happy, like all these brands, go shoot a commercial for Driver's Way or even Amherst. It's like my challenge in the background, whether like people like Drew know it or not, is not just to make, obviously the story is what you're trying to execute and all that. God, that's super moody. Anyway, so It's for me. It's trying to sneak a little bit of that mood and a little bit of the tone that I love into each project and seeing how much I can get away with it.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, it works. I think the stuff that I see from you looks great.
I
And
appreciate it.
then on top of that, I mean, I'm trying to see if I can pull up. I don't think you've got the Am First on here. Um,
Oh no, I didn't put it on my Vimeo. I
I'm
think
trying to
it's on
remember.
Drew's.
At least, well, here you go. We
Yeah,
got it here. Like I see a little bit of what you're talking about there with the moody kind of vibe to it, but I think in here it feels less scary
right.
and more sincere and more like um almost authentic kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, I think there's a way to go naturalistic and still have a little bit of mood. Like everybody sees the world every day, and so that having a little bit of extra sauce over what you see every day, I think people are going to like that more, whether they know why they like it or not.
Well, I love this because of the fact that we get so many of the cool Birmingham
That was
spots
awesome
that are
to get the
featured in
feature.
it. Yeah,
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 Drew
that was
came
great.
through with Red Cat, and then Wheelhouse is Johnny from Work Plays, like other
Right.
company with his wife, and so that was cool to get to feature them.
And then y'all were just recently going and sort of scoping out new locations for another one, right?
Yeah, so the next one's going to be at Jacksonville State, featuring like their coach and their players. But we're trying to do a little bit of the football hype and still, show off that we sponsor the stadium and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see.
That's been really well, it's been cool to see Drew sort of step into this role. And I think from what I understand, Am First for a long time has always worked with agencies to
Mhm.
sort of get their bigger commercial kind of work done. And I know whenever I was talking with Drew originally, whenever he got on there, it was like how's his skills going to be incorporated into this new role. And I think originally they just wanted like a videographer, just somebody that can sort of set up and shoot and be a one man band
Right.
for internal communication.
Mhm.
Well, he can do that, but then also he can bring in and basically do agency in and of himself almost with the kind of crew that he has connections with and works with already. So it really seems to be a really perfect match for him and Daniel, who I think is his boss there. So
Mhm.
that's been really cool. Beautiful shot. Seriously, love what you did there. There was another film that you did. I'm trying to remember where it is. Here we go. This is one. I don't think this is actual film. This is going to be just BTS photos or I guess screen grabs from it. This was like um, a documentary. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this was an interesting project. So
I know it was with Seed Creative
that's what I was going to say.
out in
So
Tuscaloosa.
my buddy George hits me up. He's been in bands and
Yeah.
played venues with me for years.
George is a great guy. I was over at his studio just the other day. I
Nice.
guess it's probably been about a week and a half ago now.
We're both drummers, so we're like the same basically. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, anyway, so he hit me up saying, I have this thing coming through that wants really nice gear and they want somebody experienced and blah blah. What was interesting is that I hopped on the call with Stephen Preston at Red Sky, and George, and they were looking for something cinematic, that tells the story of this family, right? So that entire documentary was funded by a family that created the first like heating and air conditioning unit that's the same like in one unit, I guess, in like 1920 or whatever. And so they wanted to sort of tell the story of their family through the years. This was different. Like there, a segment of that's in 1920, and then a segment of it's in 1940, and like well, that's kind of how we told the story. But they just needed somebody that really knew lighting and could help stage bigger scenes like this. I think that's why George hit me up, and so we actually like co-DP'd it, and he was
Yeah.
more on the cam op side, and I was more on the lighting side, and bringing in my team. But
I
it was
saw a
awesome to have
little.
a budget and like a moving train and all this crazy stuff. Like
Yeah, the train stuff was really cool. That was done down in Calera, is that correct? In the train depot?
that sounds right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then there was one shot I got to see where y'all like mounted a rail system up on like the luggage racks, and then sort of rolled that through the scene. It was really cool, and sort of, I mean, obviously you got so much in the way. I mean, you couldn't just pull out seats, I would imagine, in that vintage train car.
Right.
So you had to figure out some way to be able to have, an actual dolly roll through there.
I would
Um,
love to take credit for that. I basically said, "This is what I want," and Kevin Key and Brennan Martignoni, however you pronounce it, they kind of rigged that up for me so we could get a Dana dolly through there. But yeah, I mean, we couldn't move those seats. The thing worked and was from 1920, so we needed something that could ride along the top, and that was super fun because we're
yeah.
like
Well,
moving. This is not like a lighting gag. Like
right.
the train is moving, so that was awesome.
Well, and speaking of some of those people you just mentioned, like you've got a crew of people that you work with on a regular basis. I mean, Kevin, from what I understand, is a partner of yours
Mhm.
in at least Moon Men, but maybe in, I'm not sure, in Next Level. I think that's just you. Is that
Just
correct?
me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but he's sort of a partner of yours. But then you've got Brennan. You've got, oh gosh, now I'm gonna
Jay
forget.
Galloway's right there with his mask on.
Yeah, yeah. Greg. No, what did you say?
I
Did you
said
say
Jay
not
Galloway, so he's my
Jay Galloway? Yeah, yeah. Jay Galloway. You also have oh, the DP that I see all the time with you. I've interviewed him now.
Balin.
Balin Wood. Yeah,
Yeah,
Balin. Yeah.
he
Sorry.
shouted me out. So Balin, I love you too, buddy.
But tell me, like, the team that you work with, how important is that, and how, like, I mean, especially coming from LA at one point, when you sort of assumed, I would imagine, that's where you're going to find all the great talented people to sort of collab with, and then you come back to Birmingham, and I know it's 5 years later, but here you are, like, you got a team of people that are super talented and skilled.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And I don't think 4 years ago we had that. Brennan and Balin kind of came in and we trained them up. Jay's awesome, but he's only been ACing since like 2018 or something. It's just like people get good fast here, which is awesome. Um, because there's a lot of that grinded out indie stuff where you may be the first and the second AC and you're downloading the footage. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of resourcefulness here makes people grow really fast. Because there's plenty of work here. It may not pay the best, but there's times that people can get on set. Like I always have an intern, and I'm like, dude, like we're gonna be filming outside at Railroad Park. It's gonna be awesome. Like just pay attention, like be on and be alert because you're gonna learn a ton.
What big changes have you seen? I mean, I look back at your YouTube channel, and you've been doing this at least for 12 years on the videos that I can see. In
Yeah.
those 12 plus years, what kind of changes have you really seen in the industry?
I think accessibility is a huge change. 10 years ago, there was no chance that we could shoot with a Venice or, get a film camera in here, airy lenses or like Leicas, like getting access to local filmmakers to all this equipment, I think has really allowed people to make more high end stuff on a budget because of the access. Not every small market has all the stuff that we and like other companies in town have. And so I think getting on set and working hard, you know, really quickly might get you on bigger jobs just because of your willingness to grind it out. But also just the accessibility of lights and cameras and stuff in Birmingham.
Well, and you're part of that accessibility now. I mean, you had the experience of working in rental houses in LA. but now you yourself, you and Kevin, y'all actually have a rental house. Talk about that a little bit. What was the idea behind that, and what kind of products? I see all the time the video wall or video walls, I guess I should say that I see Kevin sort of promoting and doing a lot with. But what else do y'all offer? And sort of again, what was sort of the reasoning behind starting that?
So I think the first time I met Kevin was like, I need a gaffer, and Joe Walker is not available. He's working, back at Ticelli. He's busy, so he recommends this guy to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing a short film, whatever. I'll meet up with him. Kevin was super cool. He shows up with his headphones, he's like locked in or whatever, and came and gaffed for me. And he showed up with a truck and a trailer and all this gear, like tubes, like stuff that I had only seen in LA. The little agency I was at certainly did not have any of this stuff. And so it was like, man, he's got a lot of equipment. Well, I had my Leicas, and a couple cameras at the time because I was shooting on the side, like an Ursa or whatever, a Blackmagic. And so for us, he got a building. This was like during the pandemic, right? So it's like there's not a ton going on. He got a building, and we just kind of had this vision of bringing like what I'd experienced in LA, and his level of willingness to buy equipment, but also grind to like teach and grow up. We kind of brought that here because there wasn't anything like that here in 2020. And so we saw it as more of like a studio slash rental house, and I would run the rental side since I knew the gear so much. And I actually was part-time working for ShareGrid at the time. Like a buddy of mine started that. And so I just kind of knew how to build packages and stuff too. How discounts work, 3-day weeks, like all this industry stuff. And so it just made sense to kind of come together, buy a safe and put our gear there. And then on jobs where we're on, we'll bring all of our equipment and the production gets a great deal. But also like offering, like Balin comes in and he's like, you have an Alexa, like when he's shooting on his little pocket 4K or whatever, getting that access to other filmmakers was huge for me when it's just going to be sitting there while we're not using it. Right.
Yeah. Well, it seems like Birmingham has just really boomed whenever it comes to the actual like you're saying, the accessibility of the actual products
Right.
needed to shoot these bigger budget kind of productions. Also, it seems that the accessibility for us to purchase this stuff has and even smaller scale. I mean, you talk about the 5D, that was sort of revolutionary back in the day when the 5D first came out. Well, now you've got the Sony FX3, you've got the Canon, like the 70C, 80C kind of series. You've got these smaller, more compact cameras that are probably just as powerful as you looked 15 years ago as what some of these cine cameras were doing. So what's that been like for you to see the products themselves, like the actual equipment, get more affordable and even better quality?
Yeah, it's been a crazy change. Like the FX3 shooting feature films and stuff, is insane. If you, as long as you can rig up cameras. I'm sorry, one second.
No, you're good. Yeah, the FX3 is actually what oh goodness, I'm terrible with names today. I should have drank a Red Bull before this. But um oh
The
gosh, the
creator.
guy that Chris Kimlin.
Yeah,
He's over in Greece right now shooting, or just wrapped, I think, on the second season of that House of David. And at least the first season, I'm assuming they're doing the same for the second season. It was entirely shot with the FX3. I think they had two different units shooting with those. It's crazy the kind of
yeah,
stuff that a small camera like that's doing. Not to mention you got like the Ronin 4Ds now. You've got the so many of the Black Magic cameras are really affordable now. The Pixis series just came out. Like it's incredible the cameras that are available now.
absolutely. And I think the price point is the part that Blackmagic started like driving down for everybody because the tech is always going to be getting better. That's just part of it. But like, a pocket or a FX3 being $3,000, it's like anybody can really afford that, or at least afford $150 a day to rent one. It's
Right.
crazy how
Yeah.
accessible they are.
Yeah. I think it's been a game changer for like the smaller independent, even solo kind of shooters to be able to have that kind of access to things. Does that make it harder, you think, for you working, you're typically one that works with a bigger crew. Does that make it harder to land opportunities, or do you feel differently about it?
I don't know if it's harder to land the bigger jobs, but what I think has happened is that the smaller jobs, like somebody just needs an Instagram reel or, a 30-second spot for their coffee shop, like the quality of those are so good now. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
not YouTube, like crazy transitions, but like actual filmmakers making that kind of stuff has kind of
Yeah.
changed the game. And so I feel like even on bigger productions, they're wanting to throw in stills and they're going to want a 15 pre-roll to go with it, all this extra stuff because like that's what people are offering them, like producers aren't going to go back and be like, never mind, I'll pay for each one of those individually now. It's like
Right.
you're gathering all this stuff in a day or two. But I mean, that can be a good thing because now we have to raise our level, right? And it's not all gear dependent. It's more about people are paying for your eye, your creativity and what you bring to the project.
I was looking at a quote earlier, and I wish I could remember. I think it was Roger Deakins that actually said, "Cinematography is more than a pretty picture." How do you see that to be true? Do you see that to be true?
Oh, I definitely see it to be true because if the script calls for a hideous image, then that's what you need to put in that scene. Like it's all story driven for me, and even with commercials, it's like not just what are we selling here, but like what's the tone? What are we trying to make the audience feel? And those are different images than necessarily like pretty. Um, so I think Roger's onto something there. I think he knows a little something.
He might. He might. I don't. I probably butchered the quote, but it's thereabout. So I got the essence of it.
Yeah.
Something I struggled with early on. I think I was talking with Sean Patrick Kirby at
Okay.
one point. This was early in on this, and if Sean ever watches this, I'm sorry for sort of my response to it. But he really at one point started differentiating himself from being a videographer or content creator. And he was sort of off camera telling me this, but I ended up leaving it in, and he was kind enough to let me leave it in. But basically he wanted to let me know, like, hey, don't refer to me as a videographer or a content creator. He sees himself as, I believe, like a cinematographer,
Hmm.
director of photography. Like there's a lot of terms you can use, but there's also some that he would rather you not use. What do you really see the difference there between a cinematographer and a videographer? Which is something I classify myself as a videographer,
Yeah.
and and I've learned there's really good reason for that. So, what do you see the difference there?
There's a lot to that. But for me, a videographer is someone that can show up and cover an event, or, even if they stage something, it would be, one or two takes and we're moving on. Somebody that can work hard and fast. Maybe they have good gear, maybe they don't, but they can tell a story in the edit or, try to make something pretty with what they're given, right? I think a cinematographer has a lot more creative control and has a lot more prep, in the weeks leading up to a project and needs to because there's so many moving parts, you know what I mean? You can't show up with 15, 20 people and all those people not know what they're doing. Like a director of photography needs to be a leader on set, you know what I mean? They need to have not be like, oh, but each team needs to know what their responsibility is, right? Um, and leading those teams, staying on time, and bringing all that together, I think is way more difficult than people realize that are used to just showing up with a camera, spraying and praying, and
Yeah.
hoping for the best.
What would you say to somebody that's trying to make that transition? Somebody that currently is getting a lot of those event kind of opportunities, but
Mhm.
they aspire to work on like a bigger set. They aspire to be a cinematographer or filmmaker. in that sense. But currently all they're doing is the only jobs they're able to get really are the videography type jobs.
Right. I'm not going to tell them how to take my jobs, but what I can say, advice wise for me, is to learn lighting. Like that's, like I said, I got thrown into that right off the jump, and a lot of people come up either because they took photos and they like framing, and now they want to do film or videography. Other people like storytelling, and so I was going to be a director, but there's a million directors now. I'm the one with the camera, so now I'm a DP or whatever. There's different routes, but I think for me, like sticking to lighting and constantly refining like that aspect of it has done well for me. But also the like I was saying, building a strong team. You're talking about my team that I've built. That's not by accident. You know what I mean? Like if somebody
Yeah.
comes and they're lazy or they're um, what's the word, like dropping lenses, clumsy. If they're
Yeah.
I need people that are just alert and on it. And when it's time to chill and goof off at lunch, like it's time to hang out, but like running that team in a way that's like, well, this is how we do it, to come into that team. And it's not always going to be the 10 guys that I know in Birmingham. Like I'm shooting a feature in Texas and can't really bring everybody in the fall, so it's like meeting and building rapport and getting along with the guys and hanging out. Like I think you get this shorthand that's not just, Cardi, like names for stuff on set, but more like this is what he likes. Like I need this thing to come from overhead and slide in. Like when people are cool with you and they think that you make decent stuff, I think they work hard to achieve that. And that's like the constant thing I'm going for, is like, let's all move in the same direction. That's what a DP is doing, is like, I see this thing in my head, or the director sees this thing in their head. How can we get there?
Yeah. What when you say like starting with lighting, do you feel like that I guess why do you emphasize lighting over, you know, framing and composition? Why do you prioritize lighting over, sound for that kind of stuff? Which I know sound and DPs probably obviously you're gonna end up having somebody come in on that,
MOS, I
but
don't like sound.
you
um,
don't like dealing with sound?
no.
No, I completely understand. I'm terrible with audio in general, so yeah. But
Man,
why lighting? Why is lighting so important? You feel like as a cinematographer?
it's like, not that anybody can frame an image, but like the difference is like creating and shaping a mood, right? And you could light something 50 different ways and get something that's the same mood. So I'm not even saying like you need to be able to put a backlight here and do blah 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 and know all the newest, iPad tech and all that. It's more like knowing what looks good for me and being able to get there. And so that doesn't just, you couldn't just do that on day one being on set. It's like, if you put all those things in that same place, you're still playing with ratios, and you're playing
Mm.
with the movement of the camera, asking the actor to cheat and open to frame, these little things that you learn over the years don't come with just like 3-point lighting and like the techie part of it. I think it's more like seeing it and executing it within a certain time, because there's always a budget, there's always a time crunch, and you still have to let it roll off and be like the cool guy on set and vibe it out. But lighting for me is the first thing that if I see something, I'm like, ooh, that it takes you out of the film, right? Just like bad sound, like you're saying, which is not in my hands at all. But um,
Yeah, don't go to Kyle for sound.
this is not me saying I'm the best gaffer or lighting tech or whatever. It's more just like knowing what I like, you know, and
Yeah.
selling that, constantly pushing us towards that.
All right. So I said earlier before we started this, if there's something we talk about that you're like, all right, let's cut that out. And you said, hey, you got basically you got no shame, right? You ready?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. So I want to look at your YouTube channel, and I want to look at
I don't
one of
even know
your
what's
early
on.
films.
Dude.
So There's one called Distance, and there's one called In the Shadows of Hell. I think I'm going to do the In the Shadows of Hell.
Okay.
This was pretty interesting kind of
I can't
film that you
believe
had
you
done.
have seen this because I have. Oh, look at that CG, baby.
What are you talking about, man? How? What is CG in that? Those that
We thought
couldn't
that looked great
tell.
at the time, dude.
I'm sure. I mean, this was 12 years ago, right?
This was in. We filmed this in late 2009, and I premiered
Wow.
it at festivals in 2010. Yeah, so it's almost 16 years old.
Wow. Yeah. So and this guy, this same actor shows up in quite a few of your films early
Yeah,
on.
so that's Noah Holcomb. He was one of the homies back in the day that went to UAB theater. And he actually became the PetSmart guy when we were in LA together. He was like the guy. He's always sitting there with
Really?
puppies. Um,
Wait, he lived at PetSmart, or he was on their commercials.
he was like their spokesperson, I guess, for a few years.
I
And
was thinking, like for a while there was a big thing about people living in Walmarts, the 24-hour Walmarts. So I didn't know if maybe that was what he was doing.
that's how expensive it is out there. Yeah.
So tell me with this, okay, this film, looking back at it.
This looks pretty good. Go ahead.
Well, that's what I want to know. Like, what do you see that you did right? What are you seeing that maybe room for improvement? Just at a glance. Like, no, we're not taking a deep dive into this.
Yeah, so this was no budget. This was me, $1,000. Joe Walker, who brought his Vericam from Ticelli. I don't know if they knew that or not, but and we had a little HVX 200 at the time, which would do 24p. So that was like our jib camera for this kind of stuff. I think there's like a boom up coming here in a second when they're about to go to the cabin. Sorry, I'm reminiscing. This is weird. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, man, you remember it.
the thing that we would do different is we didn't know anything about like gripping outside, like stuff going flying in the wind, and there was no such thing as tubes for eye lights at the time. Like it was our tungsten kit and us in the middle of the woods in Leeds.
Yeah,
We had good. I thought we had good like blood and stuff at the time. This is 2009.
yeah,
What we couldn't control either is like the schedule. So it was like, the 2 weekends before the end of the semester, we have to shoot it Saturday and Sunday. That's when we got the acreage in Leeds. And so it was kind of overcast and moody, which I like, but we had no control. If it was bright and sunny, then I would have had to just live with it. Like that one's way more bright and sunny, but
yeah.
there's a little jib shot for you.
There was
Oh,
there was some sound, and I get how you feel about sound, but it sounded like y'all had put some steps in, and the guy runs like 5 or 6 steps, but I think you only hear like two.
Um, yes, Kenneth Hurd, who I love, edited this film, and he did all the sound too. So it's like, moccasins on a piece of wood or something. I don't know the
Yeah,
folding, but it definitely wasn't on the day for sure.
it was funny. I mean, it's really an interesting story, interesting storyline. Even sort of the reminiscing that we see here in a minute, where
All of
where
my
the
films
guy's
have
thinking
this
back.
little nostalgia, like um, in your feels like vibe. If anybody has noticed that like thread going through, there's always some kind of how it used to be or nostalgia like built in because that's just who I am. Even back
Yeah.
then, and I didn't know it yet.
Well, this was one of the earliest ones I could find, and I thought it was good, and I thought it was one worth looking at with you. All right, so let's talk about what's next for you. Where's your production company going? Where's your rental house going? Like what's next for you?
Yeah, so I got an office at Workplay. We did the big sidewalk after party, in August of this last
Yeah,
year with
yeah.
the Porsche and the LED wall and all that.
Kevin had invited me to that, and I wish I could have made it because it looked incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That
it
was
looked
all.
like a really neat opportunity.
It was super fun, and Thomas brought the dolly out, and it was just a fun night to get people hands on all this stuff they don't normally get to play with. But that led into me getting an office at Workplay, right? Some of my buddies own that venue now, and so I've done a lot more music videos in the past 6 to 8 months than I had in the 5 years before that, doing a bunch of commercials, which is
Sorry, I wanted
fun
to
because
pull that up.
yeah,
That shoot. That was really cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, it's
interrupt
all
you
good,
there.
man. And so that's let me play and get the creative juices like flowing, but also get that out, so I can say yes to corporate and, the more boring commercials that come around. Because sometimes you just, you have to show off a thing or you need a high end interview because there's a Netflix thing coming through and it's like, okay, it's interviews, yay. And so getting back into music videos after, a decade off, I guess, really, has been super fun for me creatively, but also my passion is feature films. There's not a ton of those. There's, 8 or whatever good DPs in town and one movie comes through a year, so there's not a big pool. So, Carrie Vaughn, who I shot a movie that's on Amazon for 2.5 years ago now. It's all right now. It has another film that she's written that has a really good script. It's
Was
uh,
that the time period one that was set sort of in like the 70s,
that
60s,
one.
70s?
That one's set in the 70s, yeah, and it's like a coming of age thing about two girls that are in a family, and then there's kids like playing baseball and stuff in the trailer.
Did that include the gosh, the bank scene? That
Okay,
wasn't
so
the
that's
same
a
one.
different 70s period piece that
Okay,
I shot.
okay.
Um, that one's more like noir film fatale, like she's robbing banks and
Yeah.
you know she has exes and she's getting their money and all the stuff that anyway, so it's all right now on Amazon. Go check it out. But also, she's doing another film that we're going to shoot in Texas, hopefully in October when it cools off. So that's my next like big project, that I'm stoked about. Other than like Amherst commercials and doing all these other cool projects here, getting to travel will be fun for me.
Yeah, yeah. What is your like tenure goal with some of these? I mean, the companies that you have, the rental house, maybe specifically. Do you? I know Kevin has. I think I ran into him not too long ago, and he alluded to something that you may not be able to talk about. But he talked like there's this potential growth opportunity for him, and I don't know if you're tied into that or not, but he sort of seemed to allude to the idea
What are
of
you talking
some
about?
new space that may
Um,
be. Is that something that's can
we
be public at
we
all?
we are working towards being more of a studio and having some pre-built sets and some amenities that aren't around here. I don't know how much more than that I can say, but
Okay, that
that is
sounds
a thing.
exciting.
It does
That
sound.
sounds really exciting to have like built. I mean, like ready to go kind of sets. Assuming that's sort of the sort of brand that you are looking at establishing, something that people can come into with probably some mobility and some, flexibility of changing scenes around. But I mean, I see that kind of stuff out in LA. I see that stuff in even Atlanta where
Mm,
they have ready to go sets that you just pop into. I think Nashville, I've seen even some of that kind of stuff. So that would be cool to have it in Birmingham.
absolutely, yeah. And with the LED wall, like Mandalorian kind of kicked that off. It's like you could kind of be anywhere if you just build out the foreground set. Like we could put you anywhere in the galaxy, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So continuing that vibe for sure.
Okay. And you can't tell me location on that new studio space yet?
I don't know the answer to that. As
Okay.
far as you
All
know,
right. Kevin, come on, man. I've tried to get Kevin on here. He's a hard man to nail down.
Kevin's busier than I am, and I'm busy. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. All right. Who inspires you? This is something I always wrap up with. And this top picture, I do need an explanation for that.
Wow. Okay, so I don't know how you found some of this stuff. That was 2 weeks into being back in Birmingham, and I'm coming from LA for 5 years.
That didn't run you back to LA?
And I'm in like a chicken hatchery, fully. You had to have the thing. Oh my gosh! And I was like, "What am I doing here?"
You're back in
Yeah.
Alabama.
Yay! Who
And
inspired?
if
Yeah.
so there, hang on, there you are. Okay, so it wasn't Terrifiers, Qualifier. It looks like on your shirt that I
Yeah,
was reading
that's my
there
buddy's
when you're
band. I did a music video for them. They're like a punk band in town, but that's
okay.
my band all in playing at Furnace Fest last year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry. Go
Good.
for it. Who inspires you?
Man. Um it's crazy because now I'm like the old guy, like I was always like the 22-year-old on tour, like I'm never going to grow up or whatever. And
Don't
now
say
I'm
that
like,
because I'm older than you.
ugh. I turned 40 this year, which is insane because I thought like people that were 40 were so old when I was growing up.
They still are. My back and my hip and
Yeah.
my knee. I
Yeah.
mean,
I have to
yeah,
work
I've
out a lot just to like, oh, show up for 10 hours and look like I'm not hurting on set,
yeah. I wake up in the morning feeling like I worked out and I didn't. You know what I mean? Like I just hurt all the time. I'm like, what did I do?
I get it for sure. Man, who inspires me? At this point, I feel like my 5-year-old inspires me so much. Uh, like seeing where she's headed and like how she has like her mom's brains and like my creativity, right? So seeing like all the opportunities that are out there for her and how just insanely smart and like athletic and all, that she is super inspiring to me. But also just like Roger Deakins and Chivo, like these people that are like, oh man, it's not just to have the tech like expertise and all the equipment and all that, but just to get on like some of these movie, like to get on something at that level where you can have a 5 month prep, not a 5 day prep, and it whatever team you want in the world you can get. That's the dream for me, and it inspires me to keep grinding out and saying yes to, like I don't if somebody calls and they only have a few $100, like I'm in because I'm going to have some kind of challenge to try to overcome and make something still at a certain level, right? And
All
so,
right. So everyone heard it here.
yeah, right.
He just gave his rate.
Oh, my phone died. It's crazy. A few $1,000, yeah.
There you go. Well, that's the part you want me to cut out now.
Yeah. No, I don't care. I can still be like, I said that. No, I didn't. I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah. Prove it in writing.
yeah.
That's cool. What about, is there somebody local that you work with, or even somebody just that you have worked with in the past that you feel like pushes you to new levels, or pushes you at least to like reach beyond where you've ever reached before?
Somebody local that pushes me. Man, I feel like Seth with Alagripco is just an insane lighting wizard, right? Getting to do the Nick Saban and James Spann stuff that's not out yet with him has been a treat because I've wanted to work with him for years. Who else? Who else? Drew Gaines is an insane key grip. Like for Birmingham, like how do we have that here, right? Like he's jacked, he's hot, and he's an awesome key grip. Like, come on, dude. Um,
Only in Birmingham.
yeah. I mean, if somebody has a good story, like that's the main thing for me. Like if the story sucks, then it's like why bring everybody in and do the whole song and dance? Like nail your story first, and then let's make it, dude.
Yeah. Is there somebody local that that you see what they're doing? Maybe not somebody that you work with, but that you've seen, maybe especially on like the writing and storytelling, that you're like, wow, they're that's good stuff.
Okay, so I met Max Tatum um, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was, on that film. We needed somebody that could literally come sweep leaves out of the driveway over and over and over because it was set in the summer, but we shot it in the fall. And he was down to do that, and he's super nice. And then I find out that he like writes and directs, and he's insane, and he thinks things out. He doesn't just puke stuff out. So I think, and he actually did all the set design on the Terrifier video. So he still does art direction and that kind of stuff. I think his passion is writing and direction. He's super good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, Max has really impressed me with his storytelling. That like pilot episode he did, Haunted Henry, is incredible.
That little
Uh,
two.
I I love it, man. I really do. I love
It
the.
was
I mean,
surprising.
yeah, that part is probably the part that takes me a little bit. I mean, it's in there for a reason. And at least he explains it as a reason. Maybe I think it's really that's all he could do. No, I've
Yeah,
seen his VFX stuff. He's actually really good, so he
yeah.
intentionally
That was on
did it that
purpose.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
but man, the story, just the building of characters that he's done in that is incredible. Not to mention I can't remember the name of the short film he did. I think it's You're Already Somebody. The one that was set in like a hotel
Oh, with the pool and all that.
pool.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one, man, it's so beautifully shot. But also even more, it's just that character build, the story, the I mean, it's a single character most of the way through that film, and yet the dialogue is incredible. He does a really great job. I agree with you. He's definitely one I look forward to watching,
yeah,
just sort of where he's going to be going. So,
for sure.
all right. Well, man, I I left out a picture.
Yay! Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, somebody.
Just screenshot this and put me
There you
down
go.
there, right
I'll put
there,
it
and I'm
there.
like
That
reacting to myself.
That's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. Well, seriously, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me today on Creating Careers Podcast. I've seen your work. I've followed along for a while. I'm a fan, and I
Thank you.
look forward to seeing more and more from you. So maybe one
Absolutely.
day I'll get a chance to be a fly on the wall on set.
Come hang out.
Or if you do another thing like you did at Sidewalk this past year, I definitely hope to make it next time. So props to
Absolutely.
all that you're doing, and thank you again.
Thank you, man.